Hey, what's up guys, this is Mirror Image. Welcome to Reborn Reality. And today, before we start going to the actual build that I want to talk about, there's something I have to do first. Apparently people are almost more curious about the armor that I'm wearing and the dye combinations than they are about the actual builds. So instead of being a build advisor now, it looks like I'm also a fashion advisor. I don't know, whatever. So in order to, it's not that I don't enjoy questions about my armor, but in order to clarify, so you don't have to ask, I'm using Heritage Armor, which I've explained how to get in a previous video called Guild Wars 2 Hall of Monuments. It basically talks about linking your Guild Wars 1 account to your Guild Wars 2 account and how those achievement points from Guild Wars 1 can be translated into points that you can then exchange for armor skins. And then the actual dye distribution. I have Celestial, Abyss, and Gold, and as you can see here, this is how I have it actually set on my armor. So gold trimmings, a black sort of inside, and then a white overcoat. So there you go. If you're curious about my armor, there you have it. But now let's get into the important part of this video. Let's talk about how we're going to kill things. So people have been asking me to do a build that focuses on condition damage. And as always, whenever I make a video, I try to do something a little bit outside the box. And so I was thinking, if you've heard about, if you played the Mesmer, you know who Mr. Prometheus is. He's the guy that invented, or at least coined, the build that relies on dealing damage through clones instead of phantasm. It was a brilliant idea because everyone else focused on dealing damage with their phantasms because they do more damage. But if you focus on dealing damage with your clones, you can actually do a lot of condition damage, and it's really useful in larger fights, especially with the Winds of Chaos having that bounce effect. Well, it got me thinking, what if I tried making a build that used Sharper Images, which is a skill in dueling that takes 15 points? And what if I tried making a greatsword build that focused on dealing bleeds through greatsword clones? So that was the original concept for the build, and then I kind of realized it was a little bit too narrow just to focus on one skill as being the pivotal point of the build. So I played around with this a lot. This is probably one of the best builds I've come up with for World versus World, even better than the original one, because it relies on so many different avenues of dealing damage that no matter what type of damage reduction your opponent has, whether it's toughness or condition removal, there'll be something that you have in your arsenal that will be able to take them out. So let's talk a little bit about what we have as far as our points. Now, I did spend about 40 gold to come up with all the gear, so that's the first thing we're going to do, is look at the gear. And I got all this off the trading post, and I spent about 40 gold, which was my entire fortune, because I'm super rich. But as you can see here, I'm using gear that has power, precision, and condition damage. Now, in the past, a lot of builds that have condition damage focus on, like Mr. Prometheus is, for example. It's a power, condition damage, and vitality, or something in that those three skills, but I'm not sure of the order. Alright, but this one that we're going to be focusing on is obviously a glass cannon build. Every one of the traits in this build is focused on dealing damage. Power, extra, basically your attacks will be heavier. Precision, you'll crit more often, and then condition damage. And it's basically kind of like Berserker's armor, except that you're doing a little bit less damage with the weapons, and instead of critical damage, you have condition damage. So this kind of spreads your damage out into different methods of giving it into doses to your opponent. So that's the actual armor, and as far as the weapons, I have the same setup: power, precision, condition damage. And do you guys hear this minstrel in the background? Wow, that is lovely. Do you guys remember? Okay, I'm sorry that I'm not talking about actual guild, but do you remember when ArenaNet was going to announce the Mesmer and they said it was going to be the minstrel? Yeah, how ironic that I'm standing next to him and he's singing that awful tune. Oh my gosh. Alright, anyways. So, I don't even know if you can actually hear him making his noise or not, because I'm using a different... Anyways, whatever. Okay. So, for the other set, besides the greatsword, I have the sword and pistol combination. There are other substitutes other substitutes that you can use. For example, the torch could work well with this because the prestige has a condition, the burn with the prestige. I can't talk today. But as always, I'm a huge fan of the sword and the pistol. But as you'll see, the pistol's actually pretty important because of the phantasm that you get with it. It's really great for bleed. So let's talk about the build before I mess up and start talking about the moaning minstrel over here. Yeah, this guy. Look at him. He looks so lame. Anyways, I have 20 points in domination, 20 in dueling, 30 in illusions. This is the same type of distribution that I have for my world versus world guide, but it's very different in how it functions. So first of all, crippling dissipation. Whenever your clones are killed, they'll cause cripples. Really important if you're trying to play ranged. So, and you are for a lot of the time, especially when you're trying to deal damage with your greatsword clones or deal condition damage. You want to stay out of the way. And this is a good way to do that. If you have a bunch of clones and they're all dying randomly, then you're going to be inflicting a lot of cripples on your enemy, being able to stay away from them. These skills aren't really all that important to the build. Dazzling, yeah, it's not a very dazzling skill at all. Anyways, greatsword training is the second major trait that I have. 50 plus power while wielding a greatsword reduces the recharge of greatsword skills by 20%. So, basically you can use a berserker more and etc. Dueling is the most important trait line, probably, actually definitely in this build. First of all, we have critical infusion. It's a great minor trait because this is going to tie into being able to dodge more with deceptive evasion, meaning you'll generate more clones, which also ties into the skill crippling dissipation. So how this build was originally supposed to be in my head was you would use deceptive evasion and a combination of utilities like mirror images, and you would get out 3 greatsword clones really fast, and then they would start stacking bleeds. As those clones died, then you would also be crippling your enemy, so they'd be getting bleeds and cripples. Meanwhile, you have Fury, so whenever you unleash your phantasms, not only are your phantasms hitting harder because their attacks are going to be more likely to be critical hits, but those crits will also count as bleeds, and that's why I have a pistol in this build, because the duelist is probably the best phantasm for stacking bleeds. The warden is also really good, but since it's a stationary phantasm, it's not as accurate in actually getting the hits, so half the time it doesn't even do any damage because people just move out of the way. So that's why I have Phantasmal Fury and Deceptive Evasion. And then of course illusions. Now I didn't want this to be a Shatter build at first, but of course putting points into illusion also increases your condition damage by quite a bit, 300, so that's really useful. Likewise, domination increases your condition duration by 20%, so that's why I really wanted to focus on these two. And then dueling obviously has some of the best major traits out of any of the tree lines, so it's probably up there, tied with illusions. Anyways, so illusion of celerity, the skill that you must always have, even if you don't have a build that focuses on illusions or shattering. The first skill that I've chosen is Confusing Cry. Basically, whenever you use Cry Frustration, you also get Retaliation. This is really awesome because if you look at what we have so far, we have our clones, our greatsword clones, stacking bleeds, right? Then we also have our phantasms, which do a considerable amount of damage. Our weapon does a pretty good amount of damage. And then we also have the ability to use this skill, which is huge in this build. Cry Frustration. Whenever you use this, you're causing confusion. The confusion is so devastating. I had it ticking for over 3,000 sometimes. And if you add all of that, the bleeds, the phantasm damage, and retaliation, you're just going to be sapping. Basically, your opponent's health is going to melt away because there's so many different outlets of damage that you're dealing at one time. So if he does nothing, he's going to be taking hits from your phantasms. Your clones are going to be crippling. If he does attack you, confusion is going to melt away his health, in addition to the retaliation that you now have because of the skill. Illusionary retribution. This is an important minor trait because now all of your shatter skills inflict confusion. So even when you're using mind rack, you're doing confusion. Up to 4 stacks of confusion if you have all 3 illusions out, and you have dun, 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 illusionary persona, which means whenever you shatter an illusion, you get the same effect on yourself. So you can get up to 4 stacks of confusion just with mind rack, which normally doesn't even have that. So that's really useful. You combine mind rack with cry frustration, you're doing tons of damage with just the confusion. And then of course you still have these other 2 shatters to use whenever appropriate. So already right there, you have so much confusion damage, and if you do something like the scepter instead of the sword, which is perfectly fine for this build. Normally I don't like the scepter, but it actually works really well. You can stack the confusion on to such a degree that your opponent has nothing to do but run while you deal damage with your berserkers and with your clones. So for the next trait that I have is Master of Misdirection. Confusion you inflict lasts 33% longer. Obviously this works really well with this build because it focuses on dealing damage through confusion. So that's sort of an obvious one there. And then I already talked about Illusionary Persona. So basically what we have here is a build that, one, focuses on weapon damage, has a pretty good condition duration with what we get with domination. With dueling we get really high crits, a little bit of critical damage, our phantasms are critting more often, and we're also causing bleeds whenever our illusions crit. We can dodge roll, and manufacture clones for shatters or for cripple fodder. Then we also have our illusion line, which is used for mostly the confusion. And with Illusionary Persona, it's just a great skill to have in general, because if you're trying to run away and you don't have any clones out, you can always just hit F4, get some distortion. So that covers the build as far as the armor and the distribution of the traits. The utilities are something that I've changed all the time, and since this build doesn't have like shorter cooldowns on utilities, like where my last build, the Build of Balance, focuses on signets, you would need to keep the signets in your utilities in order to make use of the actual build. But since this build does not focus at all on making your utilities stronger, doesn't increase the duration of glamour skills like feedback, anything like that, you can pick whatever skills that you want and whatever complements your situation at the time. I find that if I do have a signet of domination is definitely the way to go. You can improve condition damage, which goes along with the synergy of the build, and you can also stun your foe. And it's also on a 45-second cooldown, which isn't bad compared to some of the other signets, like the Signet of Illusions, which is 90 seconds. Mirror Images is really useful because it not only serves as a stun breaker, but you can get more of those greatsword clones out there to stack the bleeds, and then also it can go quickly. You can use the skill and then quickly transition into your mind rack or your cry frustration for that initial burst damage. Blink is a really nice skill to have just for mobility, since Mesmers are sort of crippled in the fact that they don't have very good speed skills. Basically, we have a focus, and that's really the only way we can get speed unless we use the signet of inspiration, and then it's only a chance that you'll get swiftness. Or you can cast Chaos Storm and then pray for swiftness. There's so much randomness associated with the Mesmer that it's awesome, but it's not awesome when you don't get exactly what you're looking for. And basically the only way to get reliable swiftness as a Mesmer right now is to have the runes of the Centaur, or a similar set of runes where whenever you heal you gain swiftness. So anyways, your utilities are up to you. I also like to use Mass Invisibility a lot. I never really use Moamorph, But mass invisibility, I love all the invisibility spells. I like to use Veil, the Prestige with the torch, and then of course mass invisibility. It's so fun, and it really confuses the enemy, especially when like a Zerg just kind of disappears in front of them. So anyways, that's the build for now. I hoped you enjoyed it. I hope you like my fashion tips. We want to keep all of you guys looking fabulous and sharp, whatever. Just as a disclaimer, I'm straight, so yeah, I say the whole fabulous thing to make fun of the fact that Mesmers do have butterflies as their symbol, which I'm not opposed to. It's kind of a neat symbol, especially if you watch anime and you know anything about Cowboy Bebop, the movie. Anyways, I'm rambling again. Have a great one, and I'll try to include some World vs. World footage in addition to some other stuff. And meet Weedy Potter. Look at him. He's like Harry Potter but a plant. And look at this jump. It's ridiculous. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. Yeah.